Drop it.
Hello everybody and welcome, and we're doing a special episode of the Script Coroners where one of our hosts is debating a person who doesn't like the prequels. You know, unlike those other videos where it's just a response, this is live debate. Say hello, Seamus.
Hello.
Okay. And right now we're talking about the Phantom Menace, where they go to the underwater city.
Okay.
Yes, so they go to the underwater city, meet Boss Nass, and convince him to give them a speeder. Are there any qualms from any of you about the scene, or are there any praises that you would like to give it?
I mean, my memory isn't that great of all these movies, so individual scenes I'm not really going to critique too much, unless I really feel there's something wrong with it.
Do you want to continue to a scene where, is there any problems that you have, generally?
On a larger scale?
Well, are there any problems in any other scenes in this movie that you have?
Yes, if we were fast forward to a scene and problem, which one would it be?
I don't really take the prequel scene by scene. I try to take a look at a larger picture and
larger picture.
And I
Okay.
feel like, in general, the character development, dialogue, so forth, is just really lacking.
Okay.
Well, we'll talk about character development. What do you think about Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan in The Phantom Menace? Because honestly, I think they're an incredibly great duo, and Qui-Gon's one of the best Star Wars characters.
No, I think Qui-Gon is a good character. I mean, my main problems are with specifically the whole Anakin. I mean, he's a thing. The whole thing really, he's a person. The whole movies revolve around. I just feel like he was really horribly put together.
Well,
I mean, his jump from the good side of the Force to the bad side of the Force, I feel like it didn't really make as to why Padme thing.
well, I mean, the big overview of
Which is also just really weird.
I think the big overview of Anakin's character arc in the prequels would be that the seeds of the dark side were planted in him in Episode 1 with the fear of losing his mother, as discussed in the council scene, and then they were further developed in Episode 2 with his mother dying, and, you know, him seeing his mother dying in his dreams. And then in Episode 3, Padme, he gets a dream of her dying, and he thinks that history is going to repeat himself, and that's what leads them to act so drastically. And that's just a very simple overview. There's definitely more detail to discuss, but in general, that would be the logical through line of his character. And I'll admit that there are definitely some problems. Revenge of the Sith was initially supposed to be 4 hours long, and it was cut down to 2 hours 15 minutes. I think now, obviously, I can't excuse the film for this, but I think if we got that 4 hour cut, people would have less issues with Anakin in Revenge of the Sith and him being rushed. However, I do not personally think that he was rushed. I think that his character follows a pretty logical arc.
Well, do you have any responses or any examples you would like to give Seamus or Airborne?
I think I'm waiting on Seamus right now.
Well, okay. Let me just take this off for a second. So, what's hard for me is that this is
Your audio's cutting
I
out,
get the mother
Seamus.
thing. It's always like the fear, and it's that the fear is somehow or fear tied together is to the petty scare that makes them grow close. I'm kind of.
Yes, you're cutting out a bit.
Yeah, you gotta relay that back to us.
Okay. So, how exactly would his fear of just like a natural, normal fear that you're going to lose somebody close to you bring him all the way to full-scale evil? I mean,
Well,
I feel like that's a bit inflated. That wouldn't actually happen.
well, it wasn't just
In my opinion.
it wasn't just his fear. That was definitely the beginning catalyst, but it essentially, event after event, put him in a downward spiral that led to him joining Palpatine. First, it was the fear of losing his mother and his life in slavery. Second, it was him losing Qui-Gon and having to have Obi-Wan, who wasn't ready to be a master. After that, it was the fear of losing Padme and his attachment to her, and how close he'd grown to her, and how basically he didn't want to let her go. After that, over the course of all of those events, he became obsessed with becoming powerful enough to save the ones he loved from dying. However, he couldn't stop his mother from dying. Even after having a vision of her and going to track her down, he was just too late to save her. After all of that, pent-up frustration, not only from failing to save her, but from having a master who just couldn't do the job correctly, having a terrible life, being reminded of his terrible life, being on Tatooine, I think that just kind of led to him slaughtering all the Tusken Raiders. Then after that, he gets his arm cut off, and that's sure to make him mad, and as such, he kills Dooku and Revenge of the Sith after being egged on by Palpatine. Speaking of which, Palpatine, he's been sort of grooming him for his role as a Sith ever since he became an apprentice of Obi-Wan's. That further led him down his path of destruction, and then after that, he gets a dream of Padme dying, and he doesn't want history to repeat itself with his mother, so he starts looking for ways to save Padme. And so when Palpatine tells him about this ability to influence the midichlorians to save and create life by becoming extremely powerful, he seeks out the dark side because Palpatine told him to do so, and that's what leads him to killing Mace Windu, especially after how the Jedi treated him. He's like, okay, these guys are no better than the Sith anyway, and I really need to save my wife. And after that, he kind of regrets his decision, and for most of the runtime of Revenge of the Sith, he feels awful for doing all of his bad deeds. He cries before killing the younglings, he cries after killing the separatists, he feels really terrible. But then after seeing Padme betray him, he kind of goes all in and force chokes her, and then tries to kill Obi-Wan. So I don't think it was just the fear. I think it was everything in the prequels slowly breaking it down.
Do you have any response to that, Seamus?
To that, your stuff. I don't know on my prequel material.
Well, to be fair, I did just rewatch them after a couple of years,
yeah.
so my mind is.
I can tell you really knew it. Oh man,
my mind is fresh on me.
Yeah, well, I felt like I never really, even if that's the arc that they're going for, I feel it's not portrayed too well in the movie to be apparent to an audience.
I can agree with that to some extent in The Phantom Menace. I think that instead of really diving into it and exploring it in The Phantom Menace, they're a lot more subdued with it, and I think that kind of works to the movie's downfall. Even if it wasn't a downfall, in my opinion, it doesn't really help the film when you're kind of portraying key plot points in very subtle ways. I do think
It might have been too subtle.
Shapiro, can you stop making all that background noise?
Okay.
I think if you do examine the plot points, really dive into the film, you will find a logical through line. But the way that George made the films, it's not really something you only pick up on everything on your first or maybe even not second watch unless you're really, really looking. I think it is there. It's just not portrayed in a very flattering light. However, I think Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith are pretty open about how they portray Anakin's downfall. Whereas The Phantom Menace is more subdued. These are a lot more to the point and on the nose. Is there anything you'd like to say on that matter?
No, I think I'm good for now.
Okay. Well, Anakin's downfall is but one part of the prequels. Is there anything else you have issues with?
The dialogue is genuinely bad.
In areas, it's bad.
I think in more places than not, I think.
I think in more places than not, the dialogue is pretty cheesy and kind of silly. But I wouldn't classify those two descriptors as bad. George Lucas did say that he was going for more sort of 20s and 30s matinee stereotype style dialogue where it's
you should
Yes, Ben.
I don't know, you're using outside sources.
Huh. Well, no, I'm not justifying any logistics in terms of dialogues that as the example of only the Sith only a Sith deals in absolutes, for example. That's a nonsensical line that I can't justify without said sources, but one that I can justify is a line like, I don't know, I'm in agony, I'm haunted by the kiss you gave me. Like, it's a pretty silly line, but it is justified by the fact that George Lucas was going for a certain style, which is 20s and 30s, sort of matinee romance, where it's very on the nose, it's very, they're not very coy about how they talk, it's all very pointed. And I don't think that we should discredit that sort of stylistic choice as something that's bad. And I don't necessarily like it, at all. I definitely prefer the more tongue-in-cheek, quippy dialogue of the original trilogy, but that's a personal choice, and I don't think we should consider it in the quality of the film. There are lines that just, don't line up that well. For example, only a Sith deals in absolutes, which is not a very great line, because, that in itself is an absolute.
I think that's the point of the line, though.
Maybe, but that's not very clearly conveyed.
Hey. Okay. Couple of small changes. Looks pretty good. So,
Just because
we have
particular
you
style choice doesn't mean
buddy.
it makes it good, though.
Who are you talking to?
I'm talking with Seamus.
Oh, okay. We'll talk about it tomorrow then. Finish.
Oh.
I'll talk to you
I'll look at the corrections.
tomorrow.
I'll look at the corrections.
Oh, well, I certainly agree, but I think lines that really should be classified as bad aren't lines that are just sort of goofy and silly and easy to make fun of. I think lines that should be considered bad are lines that don't fit the character, or lines that don't fit the plot, lines that just make sense. For
Like
example,
You would bet to
example,
survive the resistance on small odds and put us all at risk.
bad odds, or hope is like the sun. If you only believe in it when you can see it. Like, those lines just don't make sense in the context of of the scene or the movie in general, and so I think lines like those should be considered bad lines, whereas lines like, oh, I'm in agony, like, even if they're stupid, they do make sense to a point. Anakin doesn't really know how to flirt or tell how he feels, so it makes sense why Anakin is saying that line, even if it is dumb. But I wouldn't consider it a bad line or a bad stylistic choice.
Mm. Well, much of the dialogue, I just feel, even if, I don't know if anybody's gonna deliberately, I mean, you say he was sort of going with, for that effect of what would you call it, 20s, 30s matinee. But even so, you want, I get what you mean, you prefer the tongue shake. I prefer that too. A more witty, interesting dialogue would be, interesting, but even with the whole idea with Anakin sometimes doesn't know how to talk correctly, I feel like that could be conveyed in a way much better than what it actually was, either acted or written.
Well, maybe, but I don't know how you'd qualify that. If you look at the way Obi-Wan Kenobi talks in the film, it's very different from how Anakin talks, and I think that's deliberate. I don't think that the way Anakin talks just happens to line up with his character. I think that while it's not like as an example of what I talked about before, Anakin being afraid to lose his mother and the whole idea behind that in the Phantom Menace being kind of underplayed, I do think it is visible in the film enough to where you could consider it an actual justification of the dialogue. In fact, basically all of the characters besides Anakin talk differently from him. So it's not like George Lucas just writes all of his lines like this, and Anakin happens to fit the bill. I'm pretty sure he deliberately wrote it that way, so that way Anakin would kind of seem out of his element as he is.
Yes,
and so it is kind of a logical justification of how he talks in Attack of the Clones and Part of Revenge of the Sith.
I'd say it's not the best example when I'm giving, but the fact that those movies are like the 3 most memed movies ever, basically. I mean, I would say usually any sort of fantastically
The Princess
well-written
Bride
dialogue wouldn't become
The Princess Bride has memes.
overly memed.
It does have a lot.
Yeah, it does. It does have a lot of memes in it, and it is considered to have fantastic dialogue.
Usually,
usually yes, bad, or I don't know. I don't think it's bad, but prequel type lines like "they fly now"
That's sequel type lines.
the lines are witty. I mean,
"they fly now" is horrible.
Okay, I'd just like to ask you, Seamus, what do you think about They Fly? What do you think? What dialogue do you think is better, the prequels or sequels dialogue?
I do have to get a drink of water real quick. I'm pretty parched.
Seamus.
way worse than the pre. I think the sequels in most ways could be like, for me, I might think them worse than the prequels. I'd have to take a look at the prequels again, but the sequels might actually be, or probably worse. I mean, they just pulled stuff out of thin air that didn't make any sense, honestly.
Yeah, there were a lot of. I mean, the most noticeable incident was when this character who was on a planet got blown up, and then she suddenly appeared in the final battle. Like I was.
No, like, I mean, the Force Awakens was okay. The Last Jedi was awful, and then it seemed like for the
I don't know about the Force Awakens being okay.
The Rise of Skywalker, like, it kind of it was better than the other two.
I think The Force Awakens, as a film on its own, is mediocre.
The Last Jedi was awful, and then it seemed like for the last one, they kind of wanted to, like... I think it's better than the other two, though, 8 and 9. For the Rise of Skywalker, they just kind of made up stuff and diverted from a... They didn't... They just pulled stuff out of... Alright. If you don't mind, I think I'm gonna hop off right now.
Ah, so soon.
Yeah, it's been a while. Alright. I figure we'll talk another time.
Yeah, I think we will.
Yes, we're.
I was beginning to enjoy this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Me and Ben Shapiro have another debate running in.
Yeah, I'm trying to, I don't.
Where was I? Oh yeah, right. Where was I? Right. The ontological argument can be distilled into these three very basic sections. Number one, God has all perfections. Number two, necessary existence is a perfection. And number three, if God has necessary existence, he exists. Would you agree with these 3 points in the ontological argument?
Yes, but I would phrase them differently.
How would you phrase them, Mr. Shapiro?
I would phrase that God has no. God isn't bound by anything, and therefore he is. Therefore he can.
Therefore, it's not. Therefore, it is inevitable for him to exist.
Yes.
Did he leave?
Okay. Yeah, he did. So you can stop recording, but me and Ben are gonna
Alright.
go another round.
Outro.
Don't upload it yet because we kind of want to upload it all at once because it was a pretty short debate.
What do you mean upload all at once?
Yes.